Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today I'll be talking about a question that I get asked a lot on the stream, and it's something to do with how many people are interested in seeing which is going to be my main healer for Crucible of Storms, which is going to be my main healer for 8.2, which is my favorite healer to heal, and a lot of people have been asking me this. There's a lot of people interested in this aspect, and I know why, because they might not be sure which healer they're going to be playing, which healer should they focus in 5-mans, and they want to hear my opinion which healers I like. Again, this is a very personal video. Choosing your main character is it's based on what you like, what type of healers you like, but this is going to be a video covering my decision. This is going to be a video looking at Crucible of Storms, my first impressions with the raid. Again, there's only been the heroic version, and the heroic version has been kind of underwhelming in terms of difficulty. But first of all, let's talk about my healer main for 5-mans, because I have different healers for 5-mans and different healers for raid situations, and the raid situation healer took me a while to decide. Actually, I'm still not fully decided on which healer is going to be my main for raiding situations, but for 5-mans I've been having immense amount of fun on the Restoration Druid. So at the start of BfA, for the people who don't know the channel or maybe viewing the first video ever, I was kind of maining a Mistweaver Monk. I used to play a Resto Druid in Legion for a long time. Then I used to play a bit Holy Paladin, a bit Resto Shaman in Legion, where I raided Mythic Argus and things like that with those characters. And at the start of BfA, I didn't really like where Resto Druid was going, and I decided to play Mistweaver Monk. And I played Mistweaver Monk in Mythic Plus, Mistweaver Monk in raids, and I was having a lot of fun with Mistweaver. It is an immensely fun class, but I feel the class to some extent lacks some repeatability, if that's the right word to say, because I feel a lot of the spells and things like that, they're kind of like, smart cast. There's not a huge amount of depth to the class. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the healing class specs are relatively simple, but Mistweaver, I kind of got bored of Mistweaver over the duration of BfA, especially in 5-mans. In 5-mans I was kind of bored of the DPS style, so I swapped to Resto Druid. Now, Resto Druid is definitely the flavor of the month. You will see so many people re-rolling to Resto Druids in Mythic Plus, because you notice the MDI is like 95% Resto Druids, and there is subconsciously some part of me that it's always nice to be playing a class that's at the top of its game, and you know that the mistakes that you do, maybe you weren't able to heal somebody, or you weren't playing well, it's not because of the class, it's not because of the class shortcomings, it's because maybe you didn't play that well, so you can improve. But that wasn't the main reason why I went Resto Druid in Mythic Plus. The main reason I decided to play Resto Druid is because in terms of fun, Resto Druid is like up here. Without a doubt, the most fun for me, most fun Mythic Plus healing class, because of the way that cat weaving works. You can go in, put bleeds, you can put Sunfire, Moonfire, go out with photosynthesis, which I love. I really love photosynthesis talent as a Resto Druid. I really didn't enjoy germination that much, because you spend most of the time just, using your global cooldowns on healing. I enjoy the DPS. And for me, the DPS portion of Resto Druid is as fun as the healing portion. So I say this a lot to new Resto Druids. If you might be scared to try out DPS, but honestly, as a Resto Druid, I feel the DPS really enhances your gameplay. Unlike other healing specs where the DPS rotation is kind of bland and boring and something that you have to do, the DPS rotation for Resto Druid is actually insanely fun, and I advise everyone and anyone to try this out. If you feel comfortable with DPS, kitty weaving, spec into Feral Affinity, and give it a go. Believe me, you'll have a lot of fun. So that's my 5-man main healer right now. I still play all the other healers, but if I'm pushing keys, I most likely will be using my Resto Druid. Funnily enough, I've been having a lot of fun with Resto Shaman in Mythic Plus on really heavy healing affixes. So I'm talking about Grievous, I'm talking about things like Bursting. I feel Resto Shaman is underplayed in terms of the amount of healing that you can do in 5-man situations. I've been having really easy time on Grievous weeks with Cloudburst Totem, with like Chain Heal healing everybody for insane amounts. If everyone's stacked up, I feel Resto Shaman is really strong in getting the group from like 10% HP to full percent HP. Their single target is a little bit, lackluster, but their AoE healing and Cloudburst Totem is so immensely fun on these healing affixes that I'm enjoying it more and more. Now, I don't really enjoy the DPS aspect of Resto Shaman. I don't think it's as fun as Resto Druid. But again, on these healing weeks, really, really fun. Now, in terms of raid healer, I've been having a lot of doubts. I don't, unlike 5-man content where Resto Druid is by far the most fun for me, in raiding content, I don't have a favorite healer. Every healer seems to be relatively fun for me. There doesn't seem to be a healing class that is way above everyone else in terms of fun. So I played multiple healing specs in mythic content and even mythic progression. Like for example, for mythic Jaina, I played Mistweaver Monk and Resto Shaman, and I got mythic Jaina kill as Resto Shaman. And after that, I tried out Resto Druid on mythic content. I cleared a lot of Battle of the Zal lore with Resto Druid. I cleared a lot of Battle of the Zal lore with Resto Shaman, and of course my Mistweaver. So I played 3 healing specs quite a lot during the mythic progression and mythic raid clears, because I wanted to get a better understanding will I like a Resto Druid in raids? Is Resto Shaman maybe more fun? Maybe Mistweaver is still very, very fun for me. So I kind of still struggle with the decision. And the decision is going to be based, at least the raid decision is going to be based on the guild. Because just as a side story, when we were progressing Mythic Jaina, I was progressing on my Mistweaver Monk. And Mistweaver Monk is not bad for Mythic Jaina, but we had a healing setup that was kind of suboptimal. Most of the top guilds who killed the Jaina, like World 100, World 200, they were using a lot of Resto Shamans, because Resto Shamans had a lot of utility. They had Battle Rest Totem, they had Spirit Link, you know, we had Windrush Totem, all of these utility abilities that made the fight really much easier. And we were running with 0 Resto Shamans at that moment. We had a crazy setup and things like that. And we finished, I think, like World 150 or 157 or something like that. So it was a good finish for the guild. But there's a lot of people who felt we could have done even better, because we had like 7% wipes a week, or like even 2 weeks before we end up killing the boss. We had these really, really good wipes, because the boss dies at 5%, you have to remember. And we had, with the suboptimal healing setup. And basically, the guild completely reshuffled the healing setup. We brought in 2 Resto Shamans. We brought in a Resto Shaman who's basically DPSing for the whole time with Igneous Potential and then healing at the end phase because of Battle Rest Totems. With Battle Rest Totems, it let us make mistakes during the fight and, like, you know, get the kill. Without Resto Shamans, you have to have this perfect pull, which is very, very rare. So basically, we didn't finish better because we didn't have the optimal healing setup, because we were doing content at pretty high end. Finishing World 100 or 150 or 200 is pretty... It still requires a certain healing setup. So for raiding situations, I'm basically gonna go with the healer that's the best for Crucible of Storms. Crucible of Storms have 2 bosses, Restless Cabal and Unat. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. Both of the boss fights are relatively undertuned in heroic content. They're very, very easy in heroic. Like, for example, Blizzard actually mentioned that the second boss, Unat, is supposed to be the same difficulty as Jaina. It doesn't feel even close to being as difficult as Jaina. Even the heroic version of Jaina is relatively hard. It requires a lot of coordination, while the heroic version of Unat, or the second boss in Crucible of Storms, is relatively lackluster in terms of, like, you get these 3 relics that you get to use. Most people don't even use the tanking relic. You don't need the tanking relic. You might even wipe the raid. You don't even need to use the healing one. You kind of only optimize the DPS one. It feels broken to some extent, because majority of the mechanics are not even required for that boss. But again, we're waiting for the mythic version. For the first boss, Restless Cabal, I feel that Mistweaver is going to be a really strong healing class, just because there is a ranged tank that is constantly taking a lot of damage. And with Serpent Statue, I feel that statue, like in heroic raid, they end up doing a ton of healing. I feel that's going to be strong. So it's all going to depend how hard the first mythic boss is going to be, which I feel is not going to be hard. I think Blizzard mentioned it's going to be mid-tier BOD level. And the last boss, or the second boss, is supposed to be mythic Jaina difficulty. So that's possibly going to be weeks of real hard progress, hopefully. And I'm not quite certain which healing spec is going to be the best for it. Now, I've been kind of thinking about playing my Resto Druid in raiding situations, but I'm always put off by the Resto Druid how do I say, utility in raiding situations, because I feel like, why would I bring a Resto Druid over like a Resto Shaman or even a Mistweaver? Mistweaver, in my opinion, is a type of healer which requires not a crazy amount of effort. You don't have to know the boss fights that much to pull really good numbers. I've been doing good numbers or good healing with relatively little effort, while when I play my Resto Druid, it feels like I need to kinda, in my head, before the fight starts, I need to think about the cooldowns I'm going to use. How am I going to use Tranquility with Flourish? Am I going to use Tree of Life there? How am I going to use my Innervate with Lively Spirits? Like, I have to think out the fight before it, and it seems like I have to try double as hard to get the same kind of healing as a Mistweaver in raiding situations. And I'm trying to think of the utility of Resto Druid in raids in terms of what do they really bring. Like, they're to some extent can be considered like a pure raid healer, so they're competing with someone like a Holy Priest, and Holy Priest is doing some insane numbers right now with having Holy War Salvation, which is arguably the best healing cooldown in the game. They have Divine Hymn, they have Symbol of Hope if your healer's running out of mana and things like that. So it's really hard for me to justify bringing my Resto Druid to raid progression, like real raid progression, when we're trying to get that world top 100 or things like that. There's very little reason for me to bring Resto Druid over something like a Mistweaver. Mistweaver could provide really good single target healing for ranged tanks or tanks in general, on top of good AoE healing, and also that, you know, 5% physical damage taken buff if there's not a single monk in the game or in the raid. And then if I really need the utility class that is just like no competition in terms of utilities, Resto Shaman. So I am probably gonna go with Mistweaver for the first boss, and for the second boss, Unat, which is the one that's going to matter, I'm not quite certain yet. There is still a chance I might bring a Resto Druid, but I'll have to see about the damage patterns. It feels like there's a lot of movement. It feels like everyone's kind of spread out for at least portion of the fight, and you kind of need a mobility. If you have the healing debuff, if you played the fight already, you know, if you get the healing debuff, you need to activate the ability and you need to soak these orbs. So mobility, or a healer that can provide a lot of mobility, is probably going to be very strong. So I'm still considering Mistweaver and Resto Druid in those case scenarios. But again, it's quite sad to see that I really don't see that much of a reason of bringing a Resto Druid as top end content. So to summarize the video before it gets way too long, Resto Druid has been the most fun healer for 5 months for me. And for raid situations, I'm deciding between Resto Shaman, Mistweaver Monk, and Resto Druid, and I'm basically going to bring a healer that fits the fight the most. And I feel for at least Restless Cabal, I feel Mistweaver is going to be strong just because of that single target healing, just because of the statue. And for the second boss, I'm not quite certain yet. We'll see. I would like to bring my Resto Druid and represent the Resto Druids in raiding content, but we'll have to see. Let me know how you feel about, or at least let me know what's your healing main. Are you changing healing mains? Are you still having the same fun with the healing class that you've been playing? Let me know how you feel about this video, and if you like this content, please do subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next guide.